I'd like to welcome everyone to this fifth installment of One Angry Black Republican. And tonight's podcast, I'm going to be dealing with this frightening pandemic we're dealing with, the coronavirus, COVID-19. And, I've been listening to a mountain of, news broadcasts, press conferences, just constantly keeping an ear, to all of these venues and these, avenues to get information, especially in light of the fact that information is, it's like Yosemite Sam, Remember when Yosemite Sam would, take out them two guns and all of a sudden they just start firing all over the place and he's elevating. I don't know if people remember that cartoon, but that's what the constant barrage of information being put out is I am receiving it like that. So it's like there's so much conflicting information. There were two young ladies on a thread earlier that provided, great information, concerning, the moment. It just is that one, website happened to be connected to the CDC. So there's a whole official body of data that is being released. But because of the political divide in the country, the centralized authority it doesn't appear that everyone is in alignment with that chain of command. We have the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who pretty much is the captain. Captain, my captain. He's our captain, navigating us through. That was just a reference to Walt Whitman, one of our famous poets in New Jersey, was the poet laureate before Amiri Baraka. And there are probably others. I'm not, familiar with that, but I don't want to get into the rant. But, President Trump is leading the charge in this effort. That one would think we would all be unified and keeping our eyes on the prize and being all in to at least the day-to-day shifting of protocols. But there's a whole nother body of information that's coming to all of us that is trying to minimize the effect that the administration from the very beginning, whether, there's a lot of little, we play a lot of games today, with information and questioning. And, when two people are opposing each other, in opposition, oftentimes you have major contradictions and ideology present that, anchors these opposing forces to their individual camps. So in this never-ending barrage of information being poured to us today, watching Governor Cuomo of New York outline a tri-state coalition, so to speak, that, between Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York, that, he makes a very logical argument. But the subtle dig, to, especially since, when you look at what's being coordinated at the federal level, via Donald Trump, his argument extends to, back to the first moments when I guess this virus started to swell in China. One of President Trump's first actions was to, shut down all travel between China and the U.S., which, looking back in retrospect, was a brilliant move. Okay, so, but you could sense the disconnect, especially when you add in the point that, one of the measures Cuomo gave in terms of, well, first off, let's talk about the reasoning. So Cuomo, I guess contacts the New Jersey governor and the governor of Connecticut, and they, coordinate this effort to, start putting some concrete actions together, because he was arguing that, the Trump administration was slow moving on getting some type of federal plan together, which, ultimately seems, well, let's not even get into let's just talk about the facts. Cuomo argued that, what sense does it make to shut down, bars and sporting events, party, all these nightlife, venues. What's the point of shutting all those down in New York when, a New Yorker can, just drive into Jersey, if they wanted to hang out at a bar, go right into Jersey, or, drive into Connecticut and vice versa on both ends. And because of that reality, all three of those states, or these states, have, formulated this coalition and laid out a series of protocols that people should be following, because the goal here is to get ahead of the spread of the virus in an attempt to contain it as quickly as possible, or to blunt the projected curve this virus is going to take when it begins to peak, which could be months, according to various speculations. So they're imposing on the individuals in the people in these states, one, to restrict, they shut down all of the schools. They, shut down sporting events, concerts, you name it, any venue that would because according to Cuomo, and this is part of that disconnect I'm talking about, because Cuomo says today that all gatherings of 50 people, okay, or, no more than 50 people for any particular gathering is acceptable. But then Donald Trump, during his address to the press, he's offering up different numbers. He wants the restrictions at no more than 10 people at any particular event or venue. So or at any venue. So you see the problem here, okay, with just those two. Okay, and God knows what else is happening around the rest of the country, since there's nowhere to run to. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. This virus is sweeping through the world, like a biblical deluge bent on. It is so interesting or ironic that I was watching Endgame, the Avengers Endgame, and thinking about Thanos and how Thanos, he had this desire to, get all these, the Infinity Stones, and with all of it, he could wipe out a large percentage of the global population, because, and which is ironic, like I said, because here we are in the 21st century, 2020, and we're thinking about many of the same issues, that they were, projecting in the movie, where population out of control, population numbers, the wear and tear on the planet, or in this case, on the movie's case, the universe. But we're at this crisis moment, and where we should be all in a unified place, to try to defeat a very formidable enemy. We are using, some of us are using this moment, to continue and this opportunistic, challenge or charge against one another. And it kind of came out, some today, in looking and listening to the information coming out from Cuomo and Trump today. And the one thing that, so we're getting all this information, and the one thing that I don't think many of us are even entertaining. Why, I don't know. Maybe it's that overwhelming sense of optimism. Okay, the optimist versus the pessimist. Another way put, the glass half fullers versus the glass half emptiers. Glass half full, glass half empty. So the optimistic, are of this mindset that, this accident breaks out in China, this virus, accidentally is, I guess, broken, it breaks in China. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving any, specifics. This podcast is intended to be a rant based off the, based off the moment, the daily experiences of watching the continued, fracturing of our democracy, and ultimately feeling like Sarah Connor, trying to scream against Skynet, the coming of Skynet, to a populace that is disconnected and have been for a long time, especially politically. You got to be a special individual in the black community if your focus is politics, because so many of us are shun politics to our own ignorance. But the one, so you have your optimists on one side who are of the mindset that as long as we follow X, Y, and Z protocols, and keep your hands washed as consistently as possible, practicing good hygiene, making sure that you're spraying down things with disinfectant, and I'm assuming toilet paper to wipe everything down. And so many people have jumped into panic mode and consumed almost every store's toilet paper. Kind of reminds me of the scene in the Titanic, where when the iceberg hit and the Titanic cracked. Nightmare scenario. That the rich never really consider. Okay, so ship's going down and there's lifeboats. But there's only enough lifeboats for X amount of people. Thousands of people were not considered when these lifeboats were being placed on the ship. Some wise man or woman decided that, if something happens, we'll at least have these lifeboats, but we won't accommodate everyone on the ship. Those are the treasonous acts. Those are the treasonous acts. You are in charge of providing for the people, and you cut corners. You're making value judgments on, based off of profit margins. To think of how inhuman it is to not be considerate of everyone in a crisis moment, and not using your hammer, so to speak. It's clear some of you are much more wealthy and much more in position than others, and that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing when individuals do have that kind of organization and the resources to support 3 months of not moving, period. But we never consider, so in other words, you got those wealthy communities and wealthy households where, everyone has everything. You don't overstock on food and supplies, and, bills are paid up and everything's in order. You can hang out and take off and, enjoy, work from home, and because that's your work, you can work from home, and, so you can weather this storm. And some people have the shrewdness to do that. Forget about all of the people in the bottom, who struggle check to check, who rely on, babysitters and daycares and, child care providers. They were, dependent. Not just relying, dependent. See if those, maybe this is the ideal moment to reinstate welfare. How about that? Everyone's talking about putting money in the hands of individuals, who are at the bottom and who don't have. Why not give them welfare right now? Why not reinstate that? Because, it is real that there are individuals who, maybe in service jobs, who won't have, the ability to, get out and work. And unemployment, come on, it's like, and what about fast tracking these things? So that, all of the, those individuals who didn't have resources to go and grab some of those toilet paper products and hand sanitizers, they didn't have any resources to get those stored up, who are the most vulnerable. So, again, and this is the optimist. This is the optimist who, still, who has the overarching faith that, we're in this noble, honorable world, and, everyone's, stand up, to everyone, and everyone's, in defending their own, and everyone's keeping, everyone at bay, but, make building relations, and, we'll get over this moment or this crisis like every other country has done. That's the optimist. That's the optimist in this particular scenario. But this podcast is not going to deal with the optimist. Tonight I want to deal with the pessimist, the pessimistic view. Okay, the nightmare scenario, worst case scenario, and to highlight this worst case scenario, that I'm going to speculate on today. Okay, so I read this article, and here's the caption. Jerry Falwell Jr. says coronavirus is North Korea / China weapon to hurt Trump. Okay, so think about that for a moment. Weapon to hurt Trump. Now, if we think back in history, why would, these Asian countries, if this is or was a direct biological attack, germ warfare, there's no love in war. There's no rules. Okay, this isn't the, this isn't the Revolutionary era, the American Revolutionary era, where, troops lined up, facing one another and fire, bang, loading. This is a standoff. No, this is the age of guerrilla warfare in most cases. So, or these big, massive, armies with these generals and tanks and, bombers. We got this modern warfare era. Okay, so biological attack. I heard this first when, I was in the last podcast, I was doing an interview with Brother Lawrence Watson, beautiful interview. I enjoyed that a lot. And I'm looking forward to, the next, set of interviews. My next, I'm not even going to put it out there. My next, who I'm shooting for, to interview. Brother Lawrence Watson set a high bar. Being a, former student of Dr. John Henrik Clarke, that's a powerful, that's a powerful thing to have on your resume. So that's the first, we talked in length the day before the interview, and he was the first one who brought it to my attention that, this could have possibly been a biological attack. And the more I sat thinking about, because literally I did not, my mind has not, I'm like a pit bull. I like him. I remember Khalid used to call himself, rest in peace, brother Khalid Muhammad. And, Khalid used to call himself, a hitman of history. I'm a hitman of history. So it's like, some of us history scholars, or history buffs, whatever you want to call it. You have a whole elitist class, the Du Boisian class of, black, race managers who, for centuries have, talked on behalf of black people. They are among, they speak directly to the governor. They talk to the governor. This is that class of elitist blacks who have, directed the diaspora, because they many come from a long line of whether it be secret society fraternities, they come from this heritage that within the black experience in America, where they've represented the academic and scholastic elite, the talented 10th, so to speak. And that I remember, it was Barack who taught me. He said, a man with a PhD, they know a whole lot about a little bit. That's the PhD scholar. They know a whole lot about a little bit. And I'm not, suggesting, as Baraka was it, that they were somewhat they were deficient, in or not well-rounded. No, it was just that they knew a whole lot about a little bit, that is what, made them authorities and gave them title. And, it's like William Wallace, the nobles versus the commoners. They're the nobles of the black race, of black America. They're the nobles. The excellent class, the intelligentsia. They're the talking heads. Who are always there, providing guidance and direction from the black perspective. Al Sharpton, who is, especially after the whole FBI informant thing, very disappointing, when I think about Brother Sharpton these days. But, there's that whole class of blacks, who have, almost arrogantly, just taken that, mantle and keeps it passed into the, family, or so to speak, or the bloodline. And then you have a whole, another group of black men or blacks, that, I like to, one of my favorite, terms, the lumpen proletariat. The blacks on the ground level. Okay. The idea that and you'll notice that, a lot of the optimists, especially black optimists. Those, Farrakhan used to say, those who have a stake in the system. Those individuals, are many are in cruise control. And, using the time, to reinforce, much of what is being, spoken, in the media or amongst the leadership, who has given us this, these reassurances that, we're gonna blunt the growth of this thing, and we're gonna push it back. That group of thinkers that are on that side of the fence. And then you have this whole group of individuals who, like in this article, are, talking about this potential attack. And I'm going to read these paragraphs, really quickly. So, Jerry Falwell Jr., a staunch Trump ally and president of Liberty University, suggested on Fox News's Fox and Friends on Friday morning that the coronavirus outbreak was orchestrated by North Korea and China to sabotage the president. You remember the North Korean leader promised us a Christmas present for America back in December, he said? Could it be they got together with China and this is that present? I don't know. But it really is something strange going on. There is something strange going on. Now, I'm going to keep it real with you. Okay, so ever since the inauguration of Donald Trump, when Donald Trump won the presidency, I wasn't shocked at all. Okay, I literally, that was my king moment, I guess. I saw over the mountaintop. But, I saw, Trump's rise clearly, and, so when he began his presidency, it was almost like that moment when Obama won the presidency. People like Jesse Jackson were so in tears of joy. I mean, I see his face, but, the supporters of, who was it, McCain? Whoa, they were like awe-stricken. It was like so silent, a deadening silence watching those rally crowds, and they were devastated and heartbroken. You could feel it. Well, that's the exact same thing that happened when Trump, took office. Those same folk who, were silent and quiet and, watching, Barack Obama's, handling of the world, as president. And they dogged him. They did. And they organized against him and they fought him every step of the way. But Obama knew that fight and he was cool as a fan about it. Because he's establishment. There's an establishment Negro. And I say that in all love. There's an establishment black, who, whether it's like communicated via osmosis or, that seem to be aligned. Okay. So all of those individuals, they were awe-stricken. So when Trump wins the presidency, the same thing occurred. He had all these, folk, Democrats who was heartbroken, crying in tears. So now the world now, so the world now is dealing with a different type of American. Okay, they're not dealing with, smooth, talking diplomat, statesman, trained, through the decades, educated, all in concert, with that effort towards a rise to the presidency. I bet you, Barry Obama planned becoming the president. Okay, because I think, him and Bill Clinton, they have that same, spirited ambition that, that exudes, when arrogance meets, high intelligence. So Barack was, he had the capability, and the training and the learning, that comes with decades of being in that, process, that political, environment. So he knew how to be a president. Let's just keep it funky. He knew how to be a president. So, and I got that from, big shout out Hassan Campbell. That's my, one of my podcasts I listen to. Powerful brother, and I'm definitely supporting his movement to expose and bring down Afrika Bambaataa, but I'm not gonna get into that in a whole nother podcast. But so Trump was a shrewd businessman. Okay? A shrewd businessman. A cutthroat businessman. And that entire constituency of people that wanted to, I guess whatever you want to call it, revenge for Obama, whatever. Their candidate was Donald Trump. And they elevated him all the way to the presidency. And now the world, has been exposed to, I guess you could call it the boogeyman. Oh, there he goes. The American boogeyman. The American boogeyman. There he is. And he's leading America now. So for the last 3 years, the world has had an opportunity to sit back and watch, this fiasco of a 3 years. The whole world got to sit back and watch this, play out in the media. Play out this fight. This vitriol between, Democrats and Republicans. And then there are specific nations, that have to, experience, that kissing of the ring moment, where the American president, this newly elected American president, businessman, walks into all of these countries, with the dignity, and the honor associated with the American flag wrapped all the way around their shoulders, his shoulders. And the world has to deal with, a different way of thinking. That's how America, America is slick. America knew how to, comfort the Native American with the left hand, my brother, sliding him, a blanket, full of, infested with smallpox and, a bottle of rum, in which think of that, he gets drunk and, lays on that blanket, longer than he should, America knows how to do that. America has put that face, to the world. So, think about it. We are the country that actually dropped 2 atomic bombs. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Little Boy and the Fat Man. We dropped 2 bombs. Like this wasn't no speculation. We dropped 2 bombs. But we broadcast to the world that if this country ever gets a bomb, oh, they're gonna drop it. And we know this because we know what their faith is, and we listen to what they say, and we listen to their vitriol and their hate for America. And we have all these little clips. Well, that only means that, they got caught and you put it out there. That's what people who are, trying to manipulate other people do. That's what they do. Anytime somebody walks up to you first, that's what The Godfather, that's what, Vito was trying to explain to Michael. And he said, when I die, they're going to send someone to you. Your enemy is going to send someone to you. That's the one you're going to send him to you. To meet up and make, so we can make a deal. He said, that's the one who's setting you up. That's the one who's setting you up. So anytime someone runs to you, and they're animated, think about the woman in Rosewood who ran out and she just slept with her lover, and when she's caught, she runs out and blames it on the one person who would galvanize the rage of an already insecure American. The South, that experience wasn't all peaches and cream and glory for the master class. It wasn't. Those slave masters, were terrible men. And they were terrible men. You'd have to be a terrible man to rape, women in mass. The euphemism breeder, to sow your wild oats. So America, Donald Trump, got the world got to see that brashness, that represents America. That huge ego that represents America. We're not talking about, yes, America, as an American, I experienced America. I've been experiencing America for 40 plus years. I can't speak on, living in other, under other governments. I often think about it, especially in this era. But the world got an opportunity to see the real, Donald Trump, and the real America. This America that bombs, from afar, with drone attacks. And think about all of the individuals, strategic individuals, killed. And Gaddafi. And then Soleimani. And the world watched. How information, was given. You had half of Americans totally against that action by Donald Trump. Think about how the world is looking at this. And then think about this worst case scenario. What if the Chinese did, in fact, deliberately release this, virus, knowing that, they already had a plan to, watch the virus, because it would have to be plausible. It would have to be plausible. You just can't, release a biological weapon into the world. And, what better, and interestingly enough, the Chinese blamed America. The Chinese blamed America about, for the release of this, so it's not like, this Falwell idea, it's not like it's far-fetched. But talking to optimistic folk about that worst case scenario, most of us do this. Most of us play, best case, worst case scenario. I'm not the only one that does that. Many of us think like that. We have that structured thinking. What's the worst case scenario in this particular situation? What's the best case scenario? But for some reason, we're afraid to even speculate on that worst case scenario. And a couple of, Facebook's exchanges, I, tried to explore that idea, with some friends, that I rely on those, the way many of my friends think, from an individual perspective. Okay, so, I share, and just to talk about Facebook friends, I have two, I guess, because I have friends on both sides of the fence. So whereas, a couple of my friends in, I was over on West Side Park the other day, and, I was, talking to some fellas, and, then a brother, came up, and, he was, they were pounding each other, giving pounds and, handshakes and, hug, half hugs, but when the brother said, and I learned that this was like going on in this particular area, and it was common, the brother was like, happy coronavirus week. And I laughed at everybody. We all sitting there laughing because, some individuals have a more, sadistic sense of humor. So I posted that, happy, coronavirus day. I was, echoing the, what was coming out of that, mindset. And a part of me, I grew up in that reality. So it didn't dawn on me that it could be taken offensively. But then, I'm not one of these, individuals who have had to, deal with that kind of, emotional upswing coming from individuals. First first I posted it on my page, like literally my page, like, which I do have the, freedom of speech. But then, to hear, some of the responses from individuals, who I consider friends as well. Oh my God, how could you be so insensitive and da 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 da. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, let me just, and that's what happens, with some individuals. Some individuals, especially a lot of women, they play this game sometimes where it's like, let me just emote and just, and, it's like, we shouldn't have to be subject to, people's vitriol through their emotions, because you're not entitled, to be honest, to tell people what they should and shouldn't do. It's arrogant, it's cocky, and, whether you think I'm cocky or you think I'm arrogant or whatever you think I am, I'm entitled to be who I am. So the point is, that was something that appealed to a lot of different individuals. Happy, coronavirus day, but whether that was to knock out the, whatever, you leaving a lot of people on the ground level, and they have to make lemonade out of lemons, and if that's the choice of, comedy, to get people through a moment, so they're not, in morbidity because, they don't have toilet paper because, you folk at the top, raped all of the stores from toilet paper. There are two Americas, one poor, one, haves and have-nots. There's a Tyler Perry, haves and have-nots. So you tend to, you know, experience a lot more pessimism, from individuals who haven't, been so comfortable in the country. Now top that off with, the because it doesn't matter, if you don't have, the haves think, they have the right, to give direct. Okay, you had a great, run and led you to a place of success. That doesn't give individuals, authority. Okay, you've been able to get into a place of security, but that doesn't mean you're an authority on success. Because success looks different. Sadie went to college, Maud stayed home. That was one of my favorite Gwendolyn Brooks poems. Who's to say the woman who is struggling with 3 children, who's to say her life is not more fulfilling and more successful, than the corporate woman who, can, in this moment, while the country's in lockdown, could fly to China. China got it under control. You got Americans who have enough mass, enough, and why wouldn't they do something like that? I mean, why stay in a country where, we're just we're at the downward, end of what is being projected, to be a rise by the millions of individuals, who will eventually, become contaminated with this virus. This is happening in real time. Celebrities, Tom Hanks and his wife already have it. And they already have it. Now, I don't know a lot about, these, all I know, I wish I would have been a little bit more, I would have been paying more attention, but I was consumed, with impeachment, for months, years. I've been consumed with the impeachment, so much so that, this outbreak is happening right under many of our noses. And I don't know when many people, caught wind of the severity of what was taking place. It's like Chernobyl happened, but the media wasn't, convincing enough, to alert all of us as to the seriousness of this particular, virus. But, what bothers me, I think, in thinking about this possible, worst case scenario, that possibility, is that we probably, when Trump took office, there were a lot of people, around who, who understood how government works and how those transitions work. But if you're already of the mindset that, we're not, this man is not going to take the presidency. We have an insurance policy. We're going to take, when you're subject to that, it was one of the reasons why when I was, working at the Greater Newark Charter School, and, the former, principal had left, retired, and the school brought in a new principal, a brother. I'm not going to, put no, say no names, but, when this brother took over the principal's job, it's like every, all the teachers, kind of like, didn't even give the brother a chance. Maybe they saw something I didn't see, but, I took it culturally at the time. I'm like, why is no one giving this brother a chance? And, I when I commit, I commit. I said, all right, you know what? I'm gonna ride with this brother because, I don't, I'm not gonna have it on my cultural consciousness, because, and I think most people, I have a cultural consciousness. Yes, I have a very, astute cultural consciousness, and I think about the diaspora, and I think about, my engagement with the diaspora, and I take it seriously. So, it wasn't far-fetched for me to, sort of buy into this possibility. Notice I still say possibility, but, to think about, what Brother Lawrence said, he said, the Chinese have no problem with, killing some of their population. Uh-oh. That was a pretty heavy cough, but it was from the hookah. It wasn't from the coronavirus, so. But it wasn't far-fetched for me to entertain, this idea that, this was an act of war. Okay, so China releases this virus, which they already have the cure to, or the antidote, and then sit back after, the world watches them. They've galvanized the bleeding heart of the world, was watching them battle with this, viral outbreak, and because so many people in China died as a result, the mere thought that it could be a strategic attack on the rest of the world, that doesn't dawn on you. And that's what people do. The sensationalist does. It's like, oh my God, the white woman runs out. He raped me. The black man raped me. It's like, white men standing by. It's like they don't want to talk. They don't want to listen. They don't want to hear anything. Point the black man out. Let's go lynch us a black man, and that's it. That's it. Some people don't want to hear a story. They just want to, what happened to you? Where, baby? Oh, where? He did that? Oh, okay. We there. Like, some of us might be rational enough to pause and be like, all right, let's deal with it. But, no. Everyone doesn't have that kind of pause. Some people just, they shoot first and ask questions last. So, who's going to question the Chinese who are now dealing with the loss of thousands of, hundreds of thousands of people, now they're stabilized, but watching the rest of the world go through the exact same thing it just did. Is America that, honored and by the rest of the world that it is unthinkable that, first of all, if Iran, as America purports, ever got its hands on a nuclear weapon and could deliver it, would do it. Like they are very clear they would do it. Even though America's the only country that did it. Okay? Could the Chinese have literally dropped this, virus into the world, for the purpose of watching the rest of the world's economies crumble, to this devastating reality, while they're resurging, and literally moving towards, economically, having the rest of the world dependent on it. I mean, or the more vicious thought of an invasion. Okay, so I just wanted to give that alternate perspective, that alternate possibility of what could be taking place, which leads me to the real question that I'll leave and end this, podcast with. But what if this was an attack? And, we know it. And we got proof. What should we do in that event? If that was ever to, come to pass? What would we do? Thank you for, listening to this fifth, podcast installment of, One Angry Black Republican. Peace.